New administration. President Joe Biden has a busy first full day in office. What it means for the faithful. Senate confirmation. Lawmakers are weighing in on President Biden's cabinet picks. We have the latest. Bloodshed in Baghdad. Dozens are dead following a suicide bombing in Iraq. What Pope Francis has to say about the strike. And they're having a ball. Why the Holy Father was talking soccer at the Vatican. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, January 21st, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Joe Biden is taking immediate steps to reverse one of President Trump's pro-life policies. He is also expanding outreach to people based on their gender identity or sexual orientation. The executive actions come less than 24 hours after the new president took the oath of office. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. I was able to ask the incoming White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, about the Biden administration's plans, specifically the Hyde Amendment and the Mexico City policy. She did not give me an immediate answer, but she did have this to say about the new president's faith.
Well, I think we'll have more to say on the Mexico City policy in the coming days, but I will just take the opportunity to remind all of you that he is a devout Catholic and somebody who attends church regularly.
Hours after that answer, the White House did reveal its plans for the Mexico City policy, which bars U.S. tax dollars from paying for overseas abortions.
President Biden will be revoking the Mexico City policy in the coming days.
Dr. Anthony Fauci announced that at a World Health Organization meeting today.
And it will be our policy to support women's and girls' sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights in the United States as well as globally.
Pro-life groups like Students for Life condemn the new policies, tweeting Wednesday, President Biden and Vice President Harris support killing babies up until the moment of birth. And Republican House leader Kevin McCarthy criticizes President Joe Biden for flip-flopping on the Hyde Amendment, which prevents Medicaid dollars from paying for abortion, telling EWTN,
I think the individual that's sitting in the White House today had voted for it many times. It'd be interesting if people would change their opinion now. That would seem pretty political to me.
President Biden also appealing to people who identify as gay or transgender, signing an executive order preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. And the White House relaunched its website contact form to let people choose their own pronouns like she, her, they, them, or other.
Oh God, you made us in your own image.
And this morning, that was one of the messages the new administration heard during a virtual prayer service.
Also earlier today, President Joe Biden unveiled his national plan to beat COVID-19, signing several executive orders. Among those orders, reopening schools safely, and one way of doing that, by hiring more teachers to reduce class sizes and therefore allow for more social distancing. You can read the entire nearly 200-page report at whitehouse.gov. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
And coming up later in the newscast, analysis from Ryan Anderson, author of When Harry Became Sally, responding to the transgender moment. As Congress begins work on a new COVID relief plan, the new president brings in a new team of senior leadership in the federal government. Right now, dozens of career civil servants are temporarily leading federal agencies until President Biden's permanent nominees are confirmed by the Senate. And that confirmation process is already in full swing. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, once a political rival of President Biden, Pete Buttigieg was in the hot seat today, taking questions from senators about his qualifications to be the next transportation secretary. The former mayor says that infrastructure jobs will play an important role in rebuilding the economy.
I want to thank President Biden for trusting me with this nomination.
Pete Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, shared his goals for the Department of Transportation today as he seeks to join President Biden's cabinet. His is just one of the recognizable names like Janet Yellen and Susan Rice, now eager to get to work for the new administration across the federal government. They include nominees with a special focus on the environment and a team dedicated to combating and eradicating COVID-19. Democrats believe President Biden's nominations will face little resistance, like the rest of the new president's agenda.
We have to lay out our proposals, give them the opportunity to participate, and if they don't, vote anyway.
With 3 new Democratic senators sworn into office yesterday, the balance of power in the Senate is now split 50-50 between the parties, with Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris waiting in the wings to break any ties. But Republicans aren't promising to be a rubber stamp.
I was the last person to object holding that vote. I no longer object.
On this vote, the yeas are 84, the nays are 10. The nomination is confirmed.
Last night, the Senate confirmed Avril Haines as the next Director of National Intelligence. She is the first nominee of President Biden's to be confirmed.
To safeguard the integrity of our intelligence community, the DNI must insist that when it comes to intelligence, there is simply no place for politics ever.
As the work continues to confirm the rest of President Biden's cabinet, the Congress continues to grapple with the latest COVID relief package, even as they're looking to start that impeachment trial of President Trump. In Washington, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Vince Colley is editorial director at the Daily Caller, joins me now on Skype. Vince, good to see you. Always great to have you on.
Thanks.
As we saw, the calls for unity were plentiful yesterday. Vince, how likely or realistic do you think that is, given the rifts between Republicans and Democrats, and really, quite frankly, within the Democratic Party itself?
The rifts are deep. You're absolutely right about that. And so this is a tall mountain that for anybody of any political persuasion to climb. What really stands out to me yesterday from Joe Biden's inaugural address is, yes, it focused very heavily on unity, but there was a portion of the speech where he characterized the divisions in the country. In other words, the detractors to the Biden agenda. And he sort of sweepingly referred to them as racist or nationalist. And I think that's the kind of thing that turns off the average person who may not have voted for Joe Biden, but is looking for reasons to be unified with him. They don't want to be slandered in that way. And this is a very rough time politically between both parties. So right now, I think the idea of unifying the country, while a lot of people would desire to see that, it seems pretty distant at this moment, because I think most of Washington continues not to realize why people are disgusted with Washington. And it's typically that they're not serving, that D.C. and the people who lead here are not serving the people's interests often enough, and that creates a lot of outrage.
Yeah, President Biden actually wasted no time at all signing 15 executive orders and 2 executive actions on his first day in office. And as we know, more are expected in the near future. Some of those rollbacks mark dramatic changes from the policies of the Trump administration, especially when it comes to pro-life policies. Let's talk a little bit more about that. And Vince, what stands out to you?
Well, first of all, let me just give credit to EWTN, because I thought that Owen Jensen's question yesterday amounted to one of the most substantive questions in the entire press briefing from Jen Psaki. And it's the one, by the way, she very obviously attempted to dodge. Asking that question about specifically the status of the Mexico City policy and the Hyde Amendment led her to only answer, well, Joe Biden is a very devout Catholic. President Biden, of course, is what she said. That's not an answer to that question. We got a bit of an answer to that question today, as we saw Dr. Fauci announce the Biden administration's position on the Mexico City policy and rescinding that. And that means that American taxpayer money is going to go towards the promotion and encouragement of abortion around the world. Now we await the changes to the Hyde Amendment that were promised by Joe Biden during the campaign, which could result in American taxpayer dollars being spent on abortions domestically. Not a Catholic position. And I don't think any president can hide behind the idea that they just declare that they're a devout Catholic or have a spokesperson do that. Joe Biden, the president, needs to step in front of either Owen Jensen or anybody else who's willing to ask that question and give some clear answers on why all of a sudden he's now in a position where he's going to use taxpayer dollars. No matter your personal ideology, you'll be contributing, if you're an American citizen, potentially to expenditures on abortions. That is a tough pill to swallow for many Americans.
Yeah, Vince, we have probably about a minute left, but I want to get to this last question quickly. Still on the horizon, as you know, a potential Senate impeachment trial for former President Donald Trump, with lawmakers divided on whether that should move forward or not. What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think that signals to the American people?
Well, it signals, I think, that Washington's completely distracted from issues that actually matter to the public. So why would you be spending all of your time trying to impeach somebody who's not even in office, trying to convict and basically create a political circus around somebody who right now is a private citizen? First of all, it's already constitutionally dubious whether or not they can continue in this effort, given that he's not in office. But if they can, and they do continue, I think it's going to be another sign that Washington's got its priorities wrong. There is a country that is struggling. Many people who are unemployed still. The pandemic running through our country needs to be resolved. And people are just looking for answers from Washington, and instead they're getting spectacles.
Yeah, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much, Vince Colley, editorial director at the Daily Caller. Great to have you on.
Thank you.
Less than 2 months before Pope Francis is due to visit Iraq, 2 suicide bomb attacks ripped through a busy market in the capital, killing at least 32 people this morning. Officials say another 110 were wounded, and some are in serious condition. The attack happened amid political tensions over early elections and a severe economic crisis. In a telegram to Iraq's president from the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin writes, quote, "His Holiness Pope Francis was deeply saddened to learn of the bomb attacks at Tehran Square in Baghdad this morning. In deploring this senseless act of brutality, he prays for the deceased victims and their families, for the injured, and for the emergency personnel in attendance, trusting that all will continue to work to overcome violence with fraternity, solidarity, and peace. Pope Francis invokes upon the nation and its people the blessing of the Most High." In Spain, a priest who was just ordained last summer died from the massive gas explosion in Madrid. Father Ruben Perez was rushed to a hospital yesterday, but doctors were not able to save him. His brother, also a priest, administered the anointing of the sick. Father Perez was assigned to a parish in the center of Madrid where he was serving when the blast destroyed much of the rectory. It also left debris littering the streets. Doctors in Britain get a court order to remove a feeding tube for a Polish citizen who is in a coma. And now some bishops in the UK are asking the health secretary to step in to provide life support treatment. The 2 bishops write in part, quote, "Providing food and water to very sick patients, even by assisted means, is a basic level of care. The care must be given whenever possible unless it's medically indicated as being overly burdensome or failing to attain its purpose." China is slapping sanctions on former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and 24 other former Trump administration officials. China says that they are banned from traveling to Chinese territories. Among those named are Trade Advisor Peter Navarro, as well as Health Secretary Alex Azar. Coming up, an update on the work a Catholic group is doing to help migrants and refugees during the pandemic. China is restricting travel for the upcoming Chinese New Year celebrations. It is the biggest mass movement of people every year as millions of migrant workers visit loved ones. But starting next week, China is requiring travelers to prove that they had a negative COVID test in the last week. If not, they will have to quarantine and monitor their daily temperature. India is giving 1 million doses of a coronavirus vaccine to neighboring Nepal, and India's ambassador to Nepal says it should improve relations.
The 1 million doses of Indian manufactured COVID vaccine is indeed a landmark and a historic event in the history of relationship between the people and 2 countries.
The vaccine gift is expected to help repair strained ties between the two neighbors. Nepal's health minister says the vaccines will be given to hospital workers and other frontline health professionals within 10 days. Also in India, a fire broke out at a building under construction owned by the world's largest vaccine manufacturer. Smoke could be seen billowing from the building. The fire was at the Serum Institute of India and could affect future expansion of COVID-19 vaccine production. In Britain, an Anglican cathedral is turned into a vaccination center. The dean explains that the spire of the cathedral points to heaven.
It points towards life. It points towards hope. And so I hope that today that's exactly what the vaccination program taking place underneath the spire. I hope that's what the needles of the vaccinators are doing. They're pointing us all towards life and hope.
The organist at the Salisbury Cathedral says soothing music has helped people get through difficult times for centuries and can have a calming effect as people get vaccinated.
It just feels like coming, and now because of the music, it gives you a sort of feeling of pleasure and enjoyment in spite of having the injection, which I didn't even know had been done. Totally painless, I didn't feel it at all.
Hundreds of elderly people rolled up their sleeves to get the shots in the Great Nave, which has enough space for large numbers of people to gathering while practicing social distancing. Hundreds of migrant and refugees are stranded outside in Bosnia in freezing temperatures. Families with small children are trying to reach Western Europe. Under international pressure, Bosnian authorities erected heated tents for several hundred migrants, but dozens more are staying in abandoned houses without heat. Joining us now to talk more about migrants and refugees is Father Tom Smolich, International Director of the Jesuit Refugee Service, also known as JRS. Father, welcome back. Thanks so much for coming on. So tell us, how typical is it for migrants to be stuck in freezing temperatures, and is there anything that your group can do to help?
Tracy, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be with you, and Happy New Year. Obviously, people get stuck in many places in their travels. They can be trapped in situations of being caught in the Mediterranean Sea right now, which it's quite cold here. Also in situations like in Syria, where it can be a brutal winter and people who have been displaced find themselves without good protection and oftentimes without some of the basic necessities that we all need to survive. JRS, along with other agencies, other humanitarian groups, and especially other church groups, we do our best to accompany folks in these situations as best we can. All of us do our best to provide food and what are called non-food items, especially this time of year. We also do our best to find ways to move people into more permanent or more secure housing and safety. And at the same time, as much as possible, even in inclement weather, to maintain the kind of programs that we all do. Obviously, COVID has made some things more difficult, but keeping kids in school, keeping job programs going, keeping opportunities for women to come together to learn about various things and the various activities that we offer. Those important parts of refugee life continue to be very important, especially this time of year.
Absolutely. Father Tom, can you give us sort of a quick overview of how the pandemic interfered with your group's efforts to help the migrants and refugees?
I have to say that the pandemic effects, the effects of the disease itself, have been spotty and have been more evident in different parts of the world. What has been universally true, however, is the economic effects of jobs being lost, of restaurants being closed, of schools going to a distance modality, and where there isn't internet access, that means schools haven't been taking place. What we've been doing is doing our best to meet those immediate needs, but also as much as possible to stay on mission, to continue to offer pastoral care and psychosocial care, to do what we can to keep schools going. We've gone to radio, we've gone to WhatsApp, We've gone to other means of making sure that young children have the opportunity to learn.
Well, Father Tom Smolich, International Director of the Jesuit Refugee Service, thank you so much for your time today, and God bless you for what you do.
God bless you too, Tracy, and thank you very much for this time with you.
Up next, analysis of the Biden administration's policies on gender issues. And following a historic victory, a soccer team meets Pope Francis. We'll explain. We take a closer look now at that executive order signed yesterday by President Joe Biden aimed at, in the administration's words, quote, preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. That policy stating in part, quote, all persons should receive equal treatment under the law no matter their gender identity or sexual orientation. Ryan Anderson, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation and author of the book When Harry Became Sally, Responding to the Transgender Moment, joins me now on Skype to talk more about this. Ryan, welcome back. Good to see you again. So what's your view on this executive order? What are some of the things that it spells out?
So after an inauguration address that stressed unity and healing, we got a radically divisive executive order from our new president. The language says it's banning discrimination, it's protecting equality, but you have to understand what they view as discrimination. They're saying that equality will now require boys who identify as girls to compete on the girls' athletic teams, men who identify as women to be allowed into women-only spaces. Doctors and hospitals must perform sex reassignment procedures, and healthcare plans are going to have to pay for them. That's what this executive order, the bottom line of what the take-home is. It's radically divisive, it's highly controversial, and it's going to create 4 years of legal headaches as people sue to try to prevent these measures to actually go into place.
The Supreme Court decision in Bostock versus Clayton County is cited as justification for the policy. Remind us again what that decision said, and what do you make of it being used in this way?
They're using that just as kind of cover. Bostock was an employment law case which dealt with sex discrimination and whether or not in certain limited circumstances it could apply to men who identify as women in the employment context. But it said nothing about school bathrooms or school athletic policies or healthcare policies. The Biden administration is using that as cover to advance a radical transgender agenda that they were going to be advancing regardless. And so it's going to be very important that people of kind of sound thinking here push back on this and they defend biological reality. Our embodiment as male and female isn't discriminatory.
Ryan, what happens now? Are there legal or legislative remedies to undo this at all?
Yes, I mean, legislatively, it's a little challenging at the current moment simply because you probably don't have the votes in either the House or the Senate to respond to this executive order. But when leadership of the House and the Senate, membership in the House and the Senate changes after the next election, there could be votes there to clarify that our embodiment as male and female is what determines sex, and public policies that respect our embodiment as male and female don't violate civil rights and they don't discriminate. As far as the courts go, I think we're going to see a variety of lawsuits defending the privacy rights of women not to have men in their intimate spaces, lawsuits from high school athletes, girls, to not have to compete against boys. We're going to see lawsuits protecting doctors and their freedom to practice good medicine and to not have to perform reassignment procedures, healthcare plans to not have to pay for reassignment procedures. So in the meantime, I think this executive order really has just opened up a can of legal worms that is going to be litigated throughout the next 4 years.
And quickly, before I let you go, earlier this week, President Biden announced his pick for Assistant Health Secretary, Dr. Rachel Levine. Levine is currently Pennsylvania's health secretary and, if confirmed, would be the first openly transgender federal official. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
My big concern here is what will Dr. Levine be promoting under the guise of public health and under the mandates of the Department of Health and Human Service when it comes to non-discrimination policies. If Dr. Levine is going to use this position to advance a radical transgender agenda in which children should be placed on puberty-blocking drugs, teens should be placed on cross-sex hormones, surgery should be taking place, those would be my concerns. Is that what will this actually mean as a legal and policy matter?
Okay. Well, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time today, Ryan. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The French scientist who discovered the chromosome that causes Down syndrome can now be referred to as venerable. Pope Francis is recognizing the heroic virtues of Jerome Lejeune. It is one of the requirements for beatification in the Catholic Church. Another is a verified miracle. Jerome Lejeune deduced that Down syndrome was caused by an extra copy of chromosome 21. And finally tonight, a soccer team in Italy pulled off a huge upset earlier this week. The next day, the players were congratulated by a soccer fan.
Siete stati bravi. Complimenti.
Pope Francis greeted the players from Spezia following their 4-2 victory over Roma in the Italian Cup. Spezia is from a tiny city in the northern part of the country. It is competing at the highest level of Italian soccer for the first time. The Holy Father told the players that sports brings out the best of what is inside of us. He also wished them luck in their quarterfinal next week against Napoli. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.